Here's what's coming up on The World Today. U.S. President Joe Biden buys 500 million test kits to tackle COVID surge. UK offers £1 billion to businesses hit hardest by Omicron variant. Plus, Malaysia flooding death toll rises to at least 14. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shuboale. U.S. President Joe Biden's administration is to make 500 million rapid tests for COVID-19 available free amid new measures to tackle the surge in Omicron variant. Officials say there will be more vaccines and more support for hospitals. Omicron has become the dominant strain in the U.S., accounting for nearly 3/4 of all new cases. Here's more on this and other developments from around the world on our COVID-19 Global Update. The United States is providing the World Health Organization, the United Nations Children's Fund, and 5 other global aid groups an additional $580 million to fight COVID-19. The pledge comes as health officials in the U.S. say the new Omicron variant of the coronavirus now accounts for 73.2% of new cases over the past week, and as the country's first known death linked to the variant is reported in the state of Texas. Meanwhile, the WHO has said the Omicron variant of the coronavirus is spreading faster than the Delta strain and is causing infections in people already vaccinated or who have recovered from COVID-19.
There is now consistent evidence that Omicron is spreading significantly faster than the Delta variant. And it's more likely that people who have been vaccinated or have recovered from COVID-19 could be infected or reinfected.
The health body urges people to cancel some holiday plans as the variant spreads globally. In other developments, Thailand has reinstated its compulsory COVID-19 isolation for foreign visitors. The decision means visitors will have to undergo hotel quarantine, which ranges between 7 to 10 days. A cluster of coronavirus infections linked to a U.S. military base in Japan has grown to about 200, raising fears over the spread of the virus in the community. However, it's not clear how many cases in the growing cluster at the military base were also of the Omicron variant. Officials in New Zealand have pushed back plans to allow quarantine-free travel for residents returning from Australia.
Cabinet has decided to push back the date for self-isolation for those travelling from Australia from the 17th of January to the end of February so that we can accelerate the rollout of that booster program and have as many people boosted with their vaccination before we have people isolating at home across the international border.
The country, which responded to the pandemic with strict border rules, blames caution about the spread of Omicron for the delay. More on the situation in the United States now. We're expecting U.S. President Joe Biden to address the nation about the threat posed by the Omicron variant. Our Washington, D.C. correspondent Maria Bird joins us now. Maria, the president will address the nation soon. We're hearing that he will announce that some 500 million free rapid tests will be made available to the public. What else are we expecting to hear, especially as the holiday draws near and Omicron spreads in the country?
Good evening, Teniola. Yes, it is very clear that the U.S. is suffering greatly from the Omicron variant. This is, I think, expected by those who have been following the trends and as we watch to see what happened in Europe. But it's very unexpected, I think, for the holiday season. I think this was one holiday season people were hopeful that they would be able to gather with friends and family, without having to worry much about the COVID-19 variants and whether or not it's the Delta variant or the Omicron variant. And so as we know that he's announcing these new measures for testing, because we see that the virus is not only attacking those who are unvaccinated, but those who are vaccinated are also coming back positive as well. But we are expecting him to also campaign again for vaccination. You can expect to hear that he is going to be heavy-handed with his conversations and his discussion around why it's so important to be vaccinated, and focusing on the community immunity perspective as well. That is going to be key and paramount in his discussion. He's also probably going to advise that those individuals who are going out for the holidays, that they are careful if they are around unvaccinated individuals. He's going to probably push hard to state that those homes that are being enjoyed for the holidays should be inclusive of just those individuals who are vaccinated, rather than having unvaccinated and vaccinated individuals sharing the same space. So those are going to be some key components of his discussion.
Oh, and speaking of measures, Washington, D.C. has today reinstated an indoor mask mandate till January the 31st. You know, there's been an issue with these in the past. How are people complying so far?
Well, Washington, D.C., this is, as you said, this is just a very new mandate. And so as it stands right now, many people in the Washington area typically leave the area for the holiday season. So you're not going to really see as much of a resistance just due to the low numbers of individuals in Washington at this time. But what we'll see probably come January, the first and second week of January, we'll begin to really see the impact of the mask mandate, because she has it until the end of January. But we can expect that it could go even further than that.
All right, Maria, and you mentioned vaccinations earlier. I mean, although 73% of adult Americans are fully vaccinated against COVID-19, the Biden administration remains concerned about those who have not had jabs. What are authorities doing to get more people to take the vaccine?
Authorities are, at this time, unfortunately, it looks as if there is a very split opinion on this. We can see that there are states where the governors are very much pushing their local government officials to kind of put some things in place to mandate, but there is not any federal mandate that can be done to force the jabs and the arms. But there are various campaigns around making sure that it's available at the schools, it's available at the community events, and there's a lot of media coverage and just PSAs, as we call them here, announcements regarding, getting vaccinated, the importance of being vaccinated. And there's obviously a lot of reality based of how many have been lost as a result of being unvaccinated and the virus.
All right then, Maria, thanks a lot for the update. In other developments, the European Union's drug regulator says it's prepared for the possibility that COVID-19 vaccines may be tweaked to fight the new Omicron variant, although there is no evidence yet that it will be necessary. The agency's executive director, Emma Cook, says the agency needs more data on vaccine efficiency and the variant.
Now, let me stress, there's no answer yet on whether we will need an adapted vaccine with a different composition to tackle this or any other emerging variant. We need to see more data on the impact of the variant on the effectiveness of the approved vaccines, as well as to gather further evidence on the transmissibility, the disease burden, a more granular impact on vaccine effectiveness, including against mild disease, severe disease, hospitalization and death.
Are starting receiving important data with respect to the ability of the sera from vaccinated people or previously infected people to neutralize Omicron. And you have seen that these data are showing that indeed there is a drop in the ability of the vaccine to exert good neutralization for Omicron, but nevertheless, it will look like a booster shot of the vaccine that we have is providing good cross-neutralization.
Britain has announced £1 billion of extra support for businesses hit hardest by the wave of Omicron variant coronavirus cases. Finance Minister Rishi Sunak says he's confident the measures would help hundreds of thousands of businesses, but he adds that he would respond proportionately if the government were to impose further restrictions to slow Omicron, which will further hit the economy. Under the support, hospitality and leisure firms in England will be eligible for grants of up to £6,000 for each of their premises, accounting for almost £700 million of the new package.
The current situation is very difficult, especially for those in the hospitality industry. So today we're announcing 3 new measures to help people and businesses. Firstly, we're announcing £1 billion in financial grant support, which means eligible hospitality companies will be able to claim a cash grant worth up to £6,000. Secondly, we're providing £30 million to top up our successful cultural recovery fund to support institutions like theatres and museums. And lastly, we're reintroducing our statutory sick pay rebate scheme so that small and medium-sized companies can claim compensation for the government for the costs of sick pay for their employees. Taken together, I'm confident that these measures will help hundreds of thousands of businesses and the millions of people that they employ.
Over in Australia, Prime Minister Scott Morrison says the country must move past the heavy hand of government and authorities must stop shutting down people's lives with COVID-19 lockdowns. COVID-19 cases have been breaking records over the last several days, the surge fueled by the more transmissible Omicron variant. But Prime Minister Scott Morrison says limiting the spread of the virus comes down to personal responsibility. Authorities are also aiming to ramp up the rollout of booster shots to slow the spread of the virus.
Yes, we're going to need to continue to calibrate how we manage this virus and how we live with this virus in the face of Omicron. Of course that is necessary, but we're not going back to lockdowns. We're not going back to shutting down people's lives. We're going forward to live with this virus with common sense and responsibility. And there will be other variants beyond Omicron. And we have to ensure, as a country and as leaders around the country, we are putting in place measures that Australians can live with. And what that means is we have to move from a culture of mandates to a culture of responsibility. That's how we live with this virus into the future.
Away from the COVID-19 pandemic to other stories, a US-based Christian ministry group says ransom money was raised to pay for the release of a group of Canadian and American missionaries kidnapped in Haiti, but a dozen of them escaped captivity on their own. The missionaries, who were abducted in October by a gang known as 400 Mawozo after visiting an orphanage, originally numbered 17 people. 2 hostages were freed in late November and 3 were released earlier this month.
When they sensed the timing was right, they found a way to open the door that was closed and blocked, filed silently to the path that they have chosen to follow, and quickly left the place that they were held, despite the fact that numerous guards were close by. In the distance, they could see a mountain feature that they had recognized and they had identified in the previous days. They identified this landmark before, and they knew that this is the direction that they needed to go. They also followed the sure guidance of the stars as they journeyed through the night, traveling toward safety. This group included a married couple, a 10-month-old baby, a 3-year-old child, a 14-year-old girl, a 15-year-old boy, 4 single men, and 2 single women. With God's help, protection, and leading, they quickly made their way through the night. They walked for possibly as much as 10 miles. It's a little bit hard to discern exactly how far the distance was, but for many miles, traveling through woods and thickets, working through thorns and briars.
Now And the Pentagon has issued new guidelines designed to fight extremism within the military, but it stopped short of creating a list of groups that military members cannot join. The guidelines come nearly a year after the deadly January 6 attack on the Capitol, which dozens of current and former service members attended. The new measures include everything from prohibiting liking extremist content on social media to fundraising or demonstrating for an extremist organization.
The vast majority of men and women in our armed forces, as of course you know, serve honorably. While extremist activity in the force is rare, any instance can have an outsized effect. Groups can and do change their methodology, their ideals, their motivations, and they can reform themselves. They can disband and reform into something else. And so if we got into coming up with a list of extremist groups, it would be only probably as good as the day we published it, because these groups change.
It's also come on the program. A giant lit Christmas tree is seen floating on Trasimeno Lake in Italy. We'll tell you why in a moment. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. The head of Libya's High National Electoral Commission has ordered the dissolution of the electoral committees nationwide in a move that effectively postpones this week's presidential election. A leaked internal statement by Ahmad al-Sa'i dated December 20th outlines 6 points, chiefly the disbandment of electoral regional and local branch offices and committees. There's been no comment yet from Libya's president, who is in Cairo for a meeting with his Egyptian counterpart. And the High Court in Pretoria has granted former South African President Jacob Zuma leave to appeal a judgment that ruled that his release on medical parole is unlawful. Officials ruled that there was sufficient merit to show that the matter required the attention of the Supreme Court of Appeal, as this would also bring more certainty to issues raised by all sides. Mr. Zuma and the Correctional Services Department are fighting for the former leader to finish off his sentence at home, where he's on medical parole.
It is tried that in order to be granted leave to appeal, an applicant must convince a court on proper grounds that he has prospect of success on appeal and that those prospects are not remote, but have a realistic chance of succeeding. It bears mentioning that the scope for granting leave to appeal has been widened by Section 17(1)(a) Roman figure 2 of the Superior Court Act when there is some compelling reason why an appeal court should hear the appeal. This matter raises an important question of public law arising from the interpretation and application of Section 75 sub 7 read with Section 79 of the Correctional Services Act 111 of 1998 and the regulations promulgated thereunder. In my view, this matter merits the Supreme Court of Appeal's attention to bring certainty in the correct interpretation and application of these provisions. I'm also of the view that there is a reasonable possibility that another court may find that the order that the third respondent's time spent on medical parole should not count towards fulfilling his sentence, as this impacts on him unfairly in that, one, it was not his decision, but that of the commissioner to be released on medical parole. Second, his meeting with his political allies and a prayer meeting was a once-off thing. His freedom of movement is restricted, and this has an impact on his dignity.
And a fight has broken out in Ghana's parliament during a late-night session over a contentious government proposed levy on electronic transactions. MPs shoved, pushed and threw punches at each other, while others tried to stop the fighting. Local media reports that the chaos started after opposition MPs rushed forward to prevent Deputy Speaker Joseph Owusu from leaving his seat to vote. He was chairing the session, which was then adjourned because of the disorder. The opposition National Democratic Congress has rejected the proposed levy of 1.75% on electronic transactions, which includes mobile money payments. At least 14 people have died and tens of thousands are displaced following some of the worst floods Malaysia has seen in decades. 3 days of torrential rain over the weekend caused severe flooding in 8 states, partially submerging a number of towns and villages. The government has come under fierce criticism for not issuing warnings in time and being slow to respond. There are fears the death toll will rise sharply as more bodies are found. As of Monday, an estimated 51,000 people had been evacuated from their homes. Most of them were from Pahang on the eastern coast of the Malay Peninsula. And over in the Philippines, officials and residents of areas that bore the brunt of Typhoon Rai are pleading for food, water and shelter. Damaged roads, flooding and severed power and communication lines have hampered relief efforts. Typhoon Rai made landfall last Thursday, killing nearly 400 people and affecting 1.8 million, displacing 630,000 of them. It's the strongest typhoon to hit the region this year. President Rodrigo Duterte has ordered state agencies to restore power and communications as he promised $200 million for recovery efforts. Foreign aid has also started to arrive, including from Japan and China, while the United States says it's working with partners to help with the relief response. And on a lighter note, as snow blankets Algerian mountains, Algerians are heading to the mountains to enjoy snowy adventures with their families, despite a lack of lifts to help them reach the ski resort. Let's take a look.
At the first sight of snowfall, Algeria's skiing and snowboarding enthusiasts make their way to Tekja's blanketed mountains to practice their sport. But a lack of ski lifts and a 7-kilometer trek has put many people off from trying snow sports, athletes and instructors say.
Many people are interested in skiing and snowboarding, but when they find out how tiring it is, they can't keep doing it. The majority give up because they have to walk for at least 7 kilometers to find some snow and start snowboarding. They come twice or 3 times, then stop. We hope that the state provides the site with lifts.
For instructions at the DZ Kite Surf Group and snow sports enthusiasts, every winter they are disappointed to see that the government has not installed key infrastructure needed to get higher up the mountain range.
Each time we come, we bring friends who also bring their friends, and our group gets larger. The fact that there are no lifts affects the sport. Walking up the mountain for 7 kilometers isn't easy for everyone, so we must buy good equipment to be able to come with the group.
Despite the difficult conditions, amateur snowboarder Asma Buhagal still thinks the journey by foot up the mountains is worthwhile.
It's my first time snowboarding. I wanted to discover the activity. I have already been. We're a group of DZ Kite Surf. We usually come for treks and to snowboard, but for me, it is going to be my first time snowboarding.
And finally on the program, if you're up for some Christmas cheer, a giant lit Christmas tree can be seen floating on Trasimeno Lake in Italy this week. It's the world's largest floating Christmas tree, according to those who designed it, and people are flooded from all around the country to admire it. The tree is made up of 165 9-meter supporting poles, 7 kilometers of electric cable, 2,600 lights, and it's over 1 kilometer long. More than 100 volunteers took part in the project, which started in 2019. And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Tenio Lash Shaboale. Bye for now.